So what I recommend is that you guys actually just kind of watch what I do. If I'm going too fast or too slow, just, feel free to speak up, cut me off when I'm talking. And that way I can adjust any questions that you may have or re-demonstrate something. Uh, Normally, in a classroom setting, you guys would be following along. I feel it's a little hard tugging back and forth and trying to keep up with me doing that. So I recommend just that you guys, just pay attention, take as much notes as you can if you need to, and then, stop me when you need to. And then at the end, kind of go over your notes and try to do what we just went over in this review. And of course, this is recorded, so it will be up for review on Crash Connect later. I'm not sure if that'll be today, but I'll get with Jason on that and figure that out.
It usually takes a couple days.
Couple days. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Sweet. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen now. Let me make sure I don't have any emails up first. Cool. So I already have Pro Tools launched. I'm going to hit Command N to create a new session. And I'm just going to name this my initials dash tier 3 practice. I am going to leave it at a WAV file type, which is usually Command F to cycle through that. Command B for bit depth, I'm gonna go 24-bit this time. It looks like I'm external clocking. That might be because I have the playback engine set to the zoom. So I think it clocks at 48.
Yeah, you can't
So it's
you
set
can't
at,
change it at all. It's unfortunate.
dang.
You're stuck with 48 when you're doing the Zoom thing.
Well, that won't be a problem. But nice to know. But usually that's going to be Command R to cycle through your sample rate. I'm going to use the drop-down menu and just go stereo mix for I/O settings. It's usually Command I, but I believe this patch is still not fixed, at least not for the version that I have on my computer. If you hit Command I more than once, it still crashes Pro Tools. Command G to check or uncheck interleaved. For those of you that need a quick little refresher on what interleaved does, is if you're bringing in a stereo track, and this is not checked, you'll have two separate mono tracks, and you have to hard pan them, left or right, depending on which side you're working with on that track. But if this is checked, when you pull in a stereo interleave file, it's just going to be a stereo track. So, you have two pans of one track and it'll be hard pan for you and you can make adjustments if need be. I'm just gonna have that checked. I prefer for it to be organized in that sense. I'm gonna hit prompt for location. And I'm just gonna leave this guy on the desktop here. That way I can get rid of it later. Cool. For some reason it created a click track for me. I'm just gonna go ahead and trash that guy. So, normally for this proficiency, when you guys do it in person, you'll be recording via SPDIF with your K6. Obviously, due to the situation that we're currently in, a lot of you don't have access to that SPDIF cable or that type of equipment. So instead of recording via SPDIF, we're actually just going to record how we would normally do. Now, for this part, I'm going to have to switch it to my my playback engine to my interface just so I can get the recording down. So I'll go ahead and do that now, and then I'll switch back so that way you guys can hear what I'm doing in just a moment. I'm not using the K6 like you guys. I'm using my personal just because I got rid of my K6 a while ago. Come on. Good old Pro Tools. Let me pull that guy back up real quick. Waves, nope, not that. Recent. All right, let me double check my playback engine real quick. Sweet. All right, y'all. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I'm going to create a few new tracks here. So I'm going to do Shift Command N to create a new track. The first one is I just want a mono audio track, and I'm going to go ahead and label this Vox for vocal. While I have this window open, I'm going to hit Shift Command down to drop another bracket. For this next one, it's going to be mono as well, but I'm going to make it an aux track. So I'm going to hold Command down to switch it to aux. For this guy, I'm going to name this Vox Comp. I'm going to do Shift Command down one more time. This time I'm going to make 3 tracks. Now, while this number is highlighted, I can either type in the value or use my up and down arrows to change the value. And I need 3. I'm going to make them stereo. So I'm going to hit Command right arrow, or you can hit left. Command down because I need them all to be auxes. And I'll rename them since I have multiple after I create it. I'm going to go ahead and hit Enter to create. So I got my 3 tracks right here, right? Double click on the name here in the edit window to pull up the rename box window. And the first one, I'm going to name this Vox Verb. While you have this window open, instead of me hitting OK and double clicking right here to keep reopening, I can hold Command and click the left or right arrow to cycle through the different tracks so I can make renaming a little bit quicker. Next one, I'm going to name Drum Verb. And the third one, I'm going to name Boom. Cool. So one thing that I always get in the habit of doing is right when I create aux tracks, I like to solo save them, especially if I got some reverb going on or some type of aux send configuration for a different track, right? So that way when I solo this guy up, it's not muting out whatever effects I got going on. So I selected all these. I clicked the first one. I can hold Shift and click the last one, and it'll select the first and last and everything in between. Now, Option affects all tracks. Shift Option will affect only selected tracks. I gotta hold Command as well in that Shift Option because Command click is how you would solo save tracks, correct? Cool. So I got my track selected here. So like I was stating, you guys usually would record via Zoom, not Zoom, Spidiff, excuse me. So what we're going to do for this first part is actually compress to disk, which is similar to compress to tape. You know how whenever you're in Studio B or whatever studio you may be in and you're recording, you have the option to place it, if you're adding a dynamic processor like an LA2A, you have the option to place that in your channel path or your monitor path. Channel path being that it would be recorded with whatever you're recording at that time. So similar idea here. Now, in order for us to compress the disk in Pro Tools, we have to use an aux track because inserts are always post-recording. So if I were to just throw any type of compressor on my vocal track, it wouldn't be compressed until after my recording is done. So what I'm gonna do is on this Vox comp that I created is I'm going to insert a compressor. We're gonna use the BF76, which is modeled after the 1176. One thing to note about this compressor, and usually anything that's modeled after it, is that the roles are reversed. So if I wanted a fast attack, normally I would aim towards the lower value, which would be 1, right? In this case scenario, we actually want to go up to 7. Same idea for the release. If I wanted a slow release, I would usually aim towards the higher value, which would be 7. In this case, it's going to be reversed, so I'm going to go 1. So if you're in the middle of the proficiency and they ask for a fast attack, slow release, or vice versa, a slow attack, fast release, just keep that in mind. Cool. 4 to 1's fine for me. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to take the input and set it on the aux track itself. For you guys, if you were plugged into, channel 1 on your K6, it'd be, 1 left. Cool. Now I'm going to take this aux track and I'm going to send it out to a bus. Remember, this is a mono aux, so I need to send it out to a mono as well. So I'm going to just use bus 1 to keep it simple. Now on my Vox, my audio track, right? I'm going to come up here and set that input to bus 1. So now what we got going on is we have the signal coming in through the aux, hitting this compressor, getting compressed, coming out of this aux into my audio track. And then now anything I record will be printed with it. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna arm my track. While I have the track selected right here, I can hold Shift R to arm my track. 1 second, let me mute this because I'm hearing myself twice. Cool. So I do have some latency in my headphones right now. What can I do to fix that issue?
Isn't that in project settings?
not project settings.
Settings.
So
Options.
Playback engine.
playback engine is correct. So it's going to be our hardware buffer size and playback engine. If I drop this down to 128, now there's no latency in my headphones. When I talk, I can hear myself on cue. You'd want a higher hardware buffer size whenever mixing or mastering, and when you're recording, you want to try to shoot as low as possible. About 128 to 256 is good on your guys' devices. That shouldn't give you any issues. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and record this now. So I'm gonna hit Command Spacebar to begin my recording. Check, check. Normally, you guys would be doing this via SPDIF with an external pre, but because of this current pandemic, this is how I am delivering this information for y'all. Cool. Clearly, I had nothing scripted, so I just went off the dome. But it looks like we got a recording there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and unarm this track. I'm going to hit Command S because you guys should be saving after every step, right? Good old Pro Tools, we know never crashes, which is false. So we want to constantly be saving. I'm going to switch my playback engine back to Zoom. That way you guys can hear what I'm doing. I'm also going to change this down since we are done with the recording process. Cool. Sweet, so let's hear it. Check, check. Normally, you guys would be doing this via SPDIF with an external pre, but because of this current pandemic, this is how I am delivering this information for y'all. Cool. Was everyone able to hear that?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Awesome, y'all. So pretty straightforward, right? With the compression to disk. So next, those vocals are pretty dry. Sorry if you guys can hear yelling. There's a bunch of kids outside and a parent yelling at their kids. And this mic picks everything up. So those vocals were pretty dry, right? So I actually want to add some reverb. So I'm going to come up here on my Vox Verb track that I created, and I'm going to go Insert A. Now, unless it specifies, it just makes sense to flow in order, right? I see some people and they have random inserts in random places, and to me, my OCD goes crazy. I would like to start from the top and make my way down, unless the proficiency specifies otherwise. I recommend you guys do the same. So I'm going to come over here. So whenever we have a stereo track, we have the option for multi-channel plugin or multi-mono. And if you need a refresher, the two differences is multi-channel, the left and right side are linked automatically and cannot be unlinked. So whatever you got going on the left is going to be a mirror image on the right, so it's consistent on both sides. Multi-mono starts off linked, but gives you the capability of unlinking the left and right side, so you can have different effects on the left opposed to the right. I want a mirror image. I want everything to sound consistent from the left to the right, so I'm going to keep it multi-channel. I don't need to do anything crazy right now. I'm going to go reverb. And for this one, I'm actually going to use the R-verb. All of you should have the R-verb. It was included in your Waves bundle. Now that I got the R-verb open, I want to recall a preset. So if I come down here, I don't see any presets. Anybody know where I can locate the presets on this plugin?
It's in like the top right, I think, right? It's like load or something.
That is correct. So one thing to note is that in Waves plugins, they have a proprietary toolbar up top. And the load button is going to be where you can access the presets that are available for these whatever plugin you're using. So I can go factory, right? I want a vocal plate. So I can narrow the search to plates. And what do you know? I got two different vocal plates here. I'm just going to go with the regular here. But if you were asked to recall a preset, remember, load, whichever preset that may be. Cool. So next, all I got to do is actually send it now, right? Complete my Octane configuration. Now, just so we have a clear understanding, this Vox comp was only used to compress the disk. So we are not sending the reverb on this track. Some people get a little mixed up and they might throw it on that. Where we actually have a recording is on our mono audio track. So that is where we will do our aux10 configuration. Now, a couple different ways we can accomplish this. My favorite, and what I use in my workflow just because of how quick it is I go down to track, right? I go send track, and I just find whichever track I'm looking for. Vox verb right here, right? So I do that, and notice it labeled it for me, which is nice and organized. It uses an unused bus, labels it for us, and does the routing for us. It's kind of like skipping steps. So as you can see over here, it says Vox verb. So now all I got to do is basically turn it up. Now this is going to be drenched in reverb because I just option click to bring it to nominal, right? Check, check. Normally, you guys would be doing this via SPDIF with an... Now, let's say you're in a situation where they actually want a particular bus used. Now, it's just a couple more steps, but it's just as easy. Let's say they ask using bus 3 and 4. So I got my Vox verb. I will set the input of that track to bus 3 and 4. Then I'll come over here to my vocal track, and I will go send bus 3 and 4. And then I just got to turn it up. So it's like one extra step, right? And we don't get the nice fancy labeling like the other way. But now you know both ways to accomplish it. Cool. So now that that's all taken care of, what I want to do next is I actually want to add some MIDI to this track. There's a couple different ways to import audio, MIDI, whatever it may be, right? But for this particular step in this proficiency, we want you guys to utilize the workspace browser. I can hit option semicolon to pull up the workspace browser. If you cannot remember that quick key, you can also pull it up with the window tab. You come here, new workspace, default. Oops, excuse me, default. Cool. So what we're going to do is just navigate through our workspace here, right, and get to MIDI file that you'll be provided for your proficiency. So I have the Macintosh HD here. I can go users. I will click on my personal account. So you click on whatever yours was whenever you're doing this. Now, most likely in your proficiency, since we are delivering this to you, this file, it's most likely going to be in your document, your downloads, or your desktop, right, wherever you dragged and dropped it. So keep it simple so that way it's easy for you to find. Don't have it in some crazy path the second you get it. So for me, I have it a little bit more organized, so I have to dive in here. I got it in my documents folder. In my documents folder, I have Pro Tools classes. In Pro Tools classes, I have Pro Tools tiers. I have tier 3. I have tier 3 practice, and there is my MIDI file right there. File management, guys, right? I hope you guys are getting into your file management, especially with all this free time, right? Perfect time to organize your files. So I'm going to grab this drum once we have located it, and over here, we need this tracks column being viewed. If yours is not, it's most likely because this arrow is closed. So just click on this little arrow in the bottom left-hand corner, and you will be displayed your tracks as well as your groups, and you can adjust the heights for these if need be, right? Pretty explanatory stuff, just make sure we're on the same page. Cool. So my workspace is gone, so I'm gonna hit option semicolon again to bring it back up. Grab it and, oops, don't need all of those, just this guy. Grab it and drop it into the tracks column. Once we do that, we're going to get a little window that pops up here. MIDI import options. So when new track, first thing to note is normally this defaults as an instrument track. Since I've changed it to MIDI before, now it's defaulting to that. So this is not an instrument track. This is MIDI information. So make sure you select MIDI track. We can have it as a new track, or we can drop it in the clip list. I want a new track. Unless specified otherwise, do the same. Location, we have a few different options, right? If it doesn't specify a certain location, I would just keep it at session start. We don't need to worry about none of this right now, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK. Sweet. Now we have our MIDI track here, right? I don't like that color. That's boring. I want it purple. Nice. So I'm going to solo this up, and I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Why is it that I am not hearing any of these MIDI notes?
Because it's MIDI.
Yep, it's MIDI. It's not audio, right? These are just triggers. It needs something to trigger these notes. So if I come here, notice I have no outputs. Now, a lot of people freak out at this point because they're like, oh, shoot, I have nothing here. How do I figure out what I'm supposed to do? Nothing will appear until there's something that it can route to. So where I have this boom aux track, right? I'm gonna come up here. I'm gonna go insert multi-channel again. This time I'm gonna go down to instrument. Now you guys all should have this boom plugin. It is an Avid stock instrument plugin. It's included in your Pro Tools bundle. If you do not have it, don't do this right now. But after this review, if you got some free time, go into your Avid account, log in and download every single Air instrument and plugin that is included in your bundle. Those are things to keep handy in your toolbox because you never know when you're going to need to utilize them. And you do need them for class at certain times, right? Not all of them, but a majority of them. But I recommend just grabbing them all. So I'm going to go ahead and insert the boom. Cool. Once my boom track is actually inserted, if I come to the output, notice I can now set the output to boom. So I'll go ahead and select that. And let's listen to it now. Perfect. So I want to recall a preset. Now this is not a Waves plugin, right? This is an Avid stock plugin. Because of that, there will be perfectly fine finding our presets in the normal presets folder. So I'm just going to recall anything here. Yeah, you know what? I'm feeling Club Star. Excuse me. I'm feeling Club Star. So let's see how this sounds. Cool, that works for me. Those drums are pretty dry, right? I want some Phil Collins drums, so I'm gonna throw some reverb on them. Let's see. I know you guys all have the D-verb and R-verb, but I'll give you guys something different here. Let's go. Come on, Pro Tools. There we go. Cool. I'm actually going to recall a preset here too. So we got drums going on, right? Let's try this one. So now that the plugin is inserted, whatever plugin they ask you to, and if they ask you to tweak some parameter settings, just go in and adjust the ones need be. So I am going to come over here to my track and complete the aux send configuration. Now we're going to do it on wherever the instrument is at, if that's where we want it, right? Notice we can't do any sends on the MIDI, so that's a no-go there. So I'm gonna come over here. Again, we have our two ways of completing this, right? I can go track, drum verb, or if I need an assigned bus, I put the assigned bus as the input and do the same bus here. So I'll do it that way. So let's say they want bus 5 and 6. I'll put the input bus 5 and 6. Come bus 5 and 6 on the send, and I'm gonna turn it up. Not as wet as I was looking for, but it works as long as we got the reverb, right? Cool. Sweet. All right. Next, I'm going to come up here to setup. I'm going to go to session. And this might be something you do earlier in the proficiency, but it just came to mind, so I figured I'd throw it in there. Let's say I want my time code right here from 30 to 29.97 FPS. Now remember, there's two different types of 29.97 FPS, right? The drop and the regular. Unless it specifies drop, make sure you're hitting regular. Cool. And let's say I wanted to change my start time. I could, right? I'm not going to, but this is where I can type it in. After you change this, though, you must hit enter in order to commit the change. A lot of people, when they get to steps like this in any type of proficiency, they type it in, they don't hit enter, they close out of it, and then when we pull it up, they're in complete shock. It's like, man, I did that. It's like, oh, you didn't hit enter. So you got to make sure you hit enter. But cool. That is pretty much it for tier 3. There may be a few extra things here and there that is nothing new to you guys that they may ask you to perform, but for the most part, this is what you're looking at. So again, the first thing was compressing the disc, right? So we have an aux track here. With that aux track, it's a mono aux track. We inserted a compressor. We set the microphone input. I changed my playback engine so it's no longer available. To accept our mic input, we sent it out to a bus. We accepted that bus input on our mono audio track for our vocals. We armed our track and we recorded. Again, for this plugin, a fast attack is in reverse, so it'd be the higher numeral, and slow is in reverse, it'd be a lower numeral, opposed to other compressors. Sweet. After we did that, we added some reverb to our vocal track, right? Created a stereo aux, inserted my reverb. I can use load on any Waves plugins to recall a preset. Once I have done that, I just need to complete the aux sync configuration with the routing. So I set the input of that aux track to bus 3-4 or whichever is specified. I went back to the actual vocal track and not the Vox comp, right? Because that aux is just for the recording to print the disc. We're not sending any reverb there. There's no signal on this track unless we are talking in it with our mic input, right? It's cool. So I went to my vocal track. I sent bus 3-4, turned it up. Boom, good to go. Next, using our workspace browser, option semicolon, we navigated through here to find the drums. We grabbed it and dropped it into the tracks column, made sure it was a MIDI track and starting at the beginning of the session. No output was available until we inserted our Boom plugin on our aux track. Once we did that, the Boom output became available. And the final thing we did was we threw some reverb on that. So I put my reverb on the drum verb aux, right? And then I completed my aux sync configuration by putting the input of that aux track to a bus, whichever one it specifies. In this case, I used 5 and 6, and then went back to my Boom instrument track, bus 5 and 6, and I turned it up. Any questions for tier 3? Sweet. Cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out of this guy if there are no questions. And now I am going to open up the tier 4. Now, normally I have a link for a drive doc for you guys to download. Core erased it and didn't, because we didn't think we were going to do another one of these so soon. But this is recorded, so you guys will be able to revisit this video later on Crash Connect, and I'll talk to Core to get the practice back up on Crash Connect as well, so you guys can download it and follow along if you want to watch this. Cool. So now that I have my Pro Tools open, right, I'm gonna hit Command O to open up, because this one will actually be providing you with a session. For tier 3, we created a new session. This one you'll be opening up a session. So I'm gonna go Documents. In my Documents folder, I have classes here. I have Pro Tools tiers, tier 4 practice, Sunday session. So one thing to note is whenever you take this test, whether it's going to be through Zoom, because I'm pretty sure we're going to do another round of certifications. I have to get with Core to confirm that. I don't see why we wouldn't though. You will be provided this session as well as a zip file. The zip file is going to be this here. I already opened it. What I recommend is the second you get these files is unzip that zip file. How we unzip it, you just double click on it, or you right click and click open, right? And it will extract whatever files are in that zip. In this case, it's just a wave. The reason why we provide you with that is because you're going to have to relink a missing file. And if it's zipped, zip is not an audio file, so it's not going to recognize that. So it must be unzipped in order to relink it. Okay. Let me trash this guy. And this guy. I might need to reset a couple settings here. Cool. So I'm gonna do skip all for now. So right whenever you open up your session, this is what you're gonna get. it's a missing files prompt. We have a couple different options, right? It lets us know how many files are missing. For us, it's just one audio file. There's no video files are rendered or so forth. And it asks us what we want to do. We can skip all, which is pretty obvious, right? We just leave it missing. We can hit manually find and relink. Sometimes this works. Not all of the time, but sometimes. Other times it's just pinwheels and pinwheels and pinwheels, and you're gonna be there all day waiting for that file. So the best bet is just to, oh, excuse me, that was backwards. Automatically find and relink is what I meant. Manually find is what you normally want to click because you actually just want to go in, especially if you have an idea where those files are, and just relink them yourself. But automatically find and relink is when it'll just pinwheel most of the time. But like I said, give or take, sometimes it does find the file relatively quick. So I'm gonna hit manually find and relink and hit OK. So we get this relink window, right? Now let's say you accidentally close out of this. I still haven't figured out exactly why. Sometimes it pops up here where it'll say relink. Other times it doesn't. It's like, man, I really don't understand why it's not here. So if you're having difficulty trying to find that window, in the edit window, you see this red paper here. If we click that, it's actually going to pull it up because we have an issue within our session, and that's what it's indicating. So it pulls up the window that we need. So that red piece of paper is going to be your save button, right? Just hit that, and it'll pull this up for you. Cool. So same idea as the workspace, right? You got to navigate through your files and locate the missing file. So I can go Macintosh HD. I can go users. I'll use my account because that's the one I'm signed into. And for you guys, most likely it'll be on your desktop or your downloads folder because we're dropping it to you. But for me, I have it a little bit deeper than that. So I have to go documents again, come down here to Pro Tools classes, Pro Tools tiers, tier 4 practice, right? Sunday folder, and there it is. Now, we have opened up a folder path, right? You can narrow your search because right now it already kind of has an idea what we're looking for, but it's not finding it because we haven't narrowed our search. We must check the box of the last folder we opened to narrow it to that search location. Once we have done that, I can come over here and click this. I can go find links. Now, before I hit this, we had to convert this entire session to 48 because in order for me to share audio with you guys and have the playback engine for Zoom, this session had to be 48. It only accepts 48. Last time I tried to do this, it would not find the file because I think there was a conversion issue because, you know, match format, match duration. So I think it was not finding it because of that. We'll see if it finds it this time. But if it doesn't, just know that's probably the reason why. Whenever I actually gave the certifications, this wasn't an issue, so it shouldn't be one for you guys. But it says find by name and file ID, match 3 things we want checked. Someone trying to chime in with something? Okay.
Yeah, I had a quick question. You might have covered this, but is finding a file part of the Tier 4 certification, or is that just something you're dealing with Zoom?
No, that's part of the certification. It is. And the only having difficulty the last time this over Zoom is just because we had to convert the whole session. I don't think this one converted properly or something. Wasn't finding the exact file type when I was looking for it. But this will be should be the first step actually, besides, you know,
Okay.
opening it up and naming it. Cool. Before I do, I'm actually going to do a save as because I don't want to rewrite over this practice session in case I have to do another review for y'all. Cool. So again, find links. Once you have narrowed the search to that particular you opened up, we have find by name and file ID, match format, match duration, hit OK. So it looks like it's 90. And again, it's probably the conversion issue, which that's what I narrowed it down to last time. But normally once you hit that, it's going to locate it immediately because you narrowed the search and it's only looking in one particular spot, right? It would pop up down here as candidates. You would click on it because it's going to pop up just how it is here. You click on it and you click commit links. Yeah, I'll get with Core and maybe I'll do a separate short little video of demonstrating that so I can do it the correct way. But does that make sense to everyone? Once you hit commit links, it'll just ask you, are you sure? And once you confirm that you are sure, your files will be back. Cool.
Here's a side note, man. You can, if you have your select files to relink and you manually drag that kick file, the kick wave down below into the candidates, you can like force replace it.
Oh, that is right, huh?
Yeah, there you go. It's incompatible format though.
Yeah, I think.
That's, and maybe it's not going to work because of the Zoom conversion.
Yeah. So that is how you force it, though, right? You just drop it down here.
Yeah, you can only do one at a time. You just drag it and then drop it in the candidate section, and then it'll allow you to commit the link.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Scott. Cool. Again, I'll probably do another video demonstrating that where we can do it properly. But cool. So I'm gonna exit out of that. Sweet. So now that in theory our missing file is back up, right? Oh yeah, it looks like no, that should be fine. Let me just double check this real quick. Okay, it looks like everything's cool. Just wanted to make sure everything was reset and not already done for us. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to do some strip silence. So I'm going to come over here, and with this first portion here, I'm going to remove. Oh, this is the one I normally do. So that, I'm gonna do it a little bit differently this time, just so I can demonstrate. So I'm going to grab this snare right here, right? Snare 2. And notice we have a few little ghost notes in between, right? The last time I did this review, I did this first strip here, and that's why there's no ghost notes in there, because I took care of it. So I'm gonna hit Command U with my strip silence. I'm gonna zoom in here, and as you can see, I can adjust my threshold, right, and my start and end time. So right now, when I first pull it up, you'll probably get something like this, right? If I were to strip right now, that would not be how I adjust my threshold. And once I have the threshold set, I can adjust my start and my end time. And I might need a little bit more threshold there. Cool. And now, for the sake of your proficiency, you don't want to waste too much time on this. Make sure the majority of it is there. Obviously, we don't want the majority to cut off or the waveform, but you don't want to spend way too much time on this because you can end up timing out if you do. And that goes for anything that it's not asking, because the idea of this proficiency is to show that you were able to complete these tasks. It's not necessarily that it sounds good. Once you know all the workarounds on how to complete these tasks, then the creativity and how you want it to sound is a whole different ball game, right? Cool. So let me adjust my threshold probably a little bit more here, and then I'll adjust my end time here. So boom. So now all those ghost notes are out. So now I can hit strip. Now, once we strip away, there's obviously a little bit of silence still in there. But like I said, for the sake of the proficiency, it doesn't have to be perfect. So once we strip away, when we break up clips, what that does is it leaves room for possibility of clicks and pops. So while I still have my selection made, I can hit Command F for batch phase. Or if you cannot remember that quick key, you can come up to Edit, and right here, fades, create fade. Cool. If it doesn't specify milliseconds, you can leave it at whatever the default is. For me, it's 10 milliseconds for fade ins, crossfades, and fade outs. That works for me. I'm gonna go ahead and hit OK. Cool. So now I have created my fades and removed the possibility of clicks and pops. So what I want to do now is I want to select the rest of this clip, and I can get rid of strip silence because my task is complete with that. I'm gonna select the rest of this clip. So while I had that selection still there, I held shift, and with my grabber tool, I clicked on this waveform, and then I hold shift again and clicked on this waveform to select everything. Now, I don't want to use my, can't think of the name right now, this tool, because you see how I have all this extra space right here, right? If I consolidate, now we have all this extra silence. So I see a lot of students do this, and you know, in order to keep it accurate and precise with the rest of the session, using your grabber tool is going to be the best bet. So I can click here on this clip, right, with my grabber tool, hold shift and click this one, and it's going to select everything in between. Then shift option 3 to consolidate. And now we have one solid track here. Cool. Just running through my checklist real quick, making sure that we hit everything. All right. So next, what I want to do is I'm actually going to create some parallel compression. So I want to do it for my drums. I'm going to select all my drum tracks. So I might kick one here, and I'm going to just read out these tracks, right? And I'm going to kind of analyze it real quick. Looks like the last track is the cymbals here. So if I hold shift again after clicking the first one, hold shift, click the last one, it's like the first and last and everything in between. I like to color code my tracks, right? I don't like looking at them all the same track. This isn't part of the proficiency, just something I like to do. You can click on the little color palette here and it'll pull it up, or you can go window, color palette, and you have the capability of changing clips and tracks, clips and clips lists, and so forth. So I made them red. That's kind of a universal color you'll see in the industry for drums. You know, that doesn't mean everyone's going to do that, but it's most likely what you will see. Cool. So for the aux send configuration, I'm going to show you guys a quick way to do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold shift option, because remember, option affects all tracks. Shift option is only your selected tracks. So make sure you still have your selection here. Double check, make sure you have nothing else selected. Shift option, I'm going to go send a, and I'm going to go down to actually new track. Once I do this, it's going to default to stereo aux. If yours didn't, you know, make the adjustments as need be. And I'm just going to name this drum comp. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and hit create. Now, since I didn't check that box at the bottom, it dropped my aux track after my first selected track. If I would have unchecked that box, and what I mean by that, if I come here and go new track, this box right here, if I uncheck that, it would have dropped this aux track at the end of my drums, which it makes more sense to me, right? And because this has to do with my drums, I'm going to color code that red as well. Cool. So now I have my aux send configuration going across all tracks. If I hold command and hit this drop down arrow, what I'm going to do is, just to get the levels up, is I'm actually going to do copy to send. So with my selection still made, right? So I'm going to have these tracks selected. I'm going to do option command H, or you can come here to edit. You can come down to, excuse me, copy selection. I don't copy to send. Oh, there it is, copy to send. So we can go copy. I'm just gonna do current value and volume, and I have all my sends on send day, right? So I'm gonna keep send day. So these are obviously, so that's just gonna bring all my sends up to nominal. This is how I do my parallel compression. When I do it, I just sends all up, and then my actual drum comp aux down. And then if things are hit too hard, I come here and I make adjustments as need be. You know, it's like, kick has way too much, I'll bring this down. Everyone has their own different way. You know, there's no right or wrong mixing. The routing, though, on this step has to be correct. Since it's an aux track, what should we do? Solo safe it. So I'm going to hit command on the solo button for solo safe that guy. So if I solo up one of my drums, I can still hear the compression. Cool. So we got the routing down, right? That's one way to do it. I can come over here now, and I'm just going to insert my compressor. I'm going to use the BF76 again. And I'm just going to give some random settings here. If it doesn't specify exact settings, don't spend so much time configuring this, right? Again, it's the point of this proficiency is to prove that you are capable of completing these tasks. Making it sound good is all up to you on your end after you have learned how to accomplish these things. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out of that. And actually, I'm just gonna take this whole thing and bring it down because it's gonna be smashing my headphones. Cool. So the whole idea of parallel compression is we want the dynamic range of our drums, right? So we set our balances and we don't compress them too much here, but also maybe want our drums to punch, right? We want it to hit harder and come in and be more present in the mix. So we can keep our dynamic range, but we can also apply that extra punch with parallel compression and bring it more up front, right? Doing a little bit of an exploration here to demonstrate. Cool. Sweet, sweet. You know, if they specify a certain bus, same idea, which I'll just show, right? We would have to create a stereo aux. After you create the stereo aux, you would use whatever bus they ask for. Let's say they ask for bus, I'm gonna say 3 and 4, right? I set the drum comp to bus 3 and 4, right? And we are golden as long as our sends are up. Cool.
Hey, Adam, I don't know if you already did it. How do you copy the fader position of the large faders to the send faders?
Yeah, that's going to be the copy to send. It's going to be Option Command H. So whenever you do that, though, it's going to affect whatever tracks you have selected. So just make sure you have the correct track selected, then Option Command H.
Awesome. Thank you.
No problem. Cool. So next, what I want to do is I actually want to create a 50 hertz tone for my kick drum, kind of like an 808, right? And what I wanted to do is every time that kick drum plays, I want to be able to hear it. So I don't have a kick drum clearly right now, but maybe I could just drag and drop that one I have, so that way we can get one in the works. Pro Tools classes. No. There we go. Here's tier 4 practice. And we have our kick right here. So just for demonstration, I'm just going to bring this up, right? Come on. There we go. Yeah, it looks like it may even be the wrong file because it's not the same length. Maybe that's where the issue was as well. Cool. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just solo this guy up, right? I guess we could use this kick too. Either one probably would have been fine. That one's more low end. So I'll just use this one. So I'm gonna do Shift Command N to create a new kick. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to make a mono aux. And I'm just gonna name this 50 hertz, right? An aux track, so I'm gonna solo safe it, Command click on the solo button. Cool. Now what I'm going to do is on that aux track, I'm going to insert a tone generator. So I'm going to come to Insert A, Plugin, and in the Other tab, we have a signal generator here. Flatline. Cool. So I'm going to bring this down all the way to 50. If I hold Command, I get a more precise change in value, right? To 50 hertz. Oops. Or you could just come here and type it in and make life easier. Cool. Now there's nothing musical about that right now, right? And if I hit play, that would just bleed through the entire track. So what I want to do is right after that plugin is I'm going to insert an expander gate. So I'm gonna go Dynamics and there it is. Dynamic 3 expander gate. You guys should all have this one. So what I want to do, there's a couple things that I need to do in here. First thing is to get rid of that bleed throughout the entire song is I'm going to turn the sidechain on, right? I hit this key and notice it's no longer, we don't hear it. Next, what I'll do is where it says range, I'm going to drop this all the way down to -80. So that way we don't leave a chance of bleed coming through. We want it to only come out when that kick opens and then be gone once the kick is done being played. So only on the transient hits. So we turned our sidechain on. We dropped this to -80. And now where this key is that says no key input, we are going to assign this to a bus. And I don't believe we've used bus 1 yet. So I'm going to just use bus 1 to keep it simple. So now what I need to do is I'm going to come back to my kick, right? And I am going to go bus 1. And I'm going to turn this guy all the way up. So now when I hit play, now that's a lot of low end, right? you might not be able to hear it. But if I bring it all the way up here, it's more distinctive, right? So that's only opening up when the kick plays and then completely closes that door once it's done playing. And that's the idea. Sweet. Any questions about that? Sweet, sweet. All right, let me just check my checklist here, make sure we're on the right page.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Could you sidechain it to track 1 instead of the bus?
To track 1, you know?
Yeah, like directly to the kick track instead of just, or not track 1 or track 2, but like directly to that kick track instead of sidechaining it to the bus.
I don't believe so, because it only gives you the opportunity for bus inputs. Oh, well, I guess. Yeah, no, these are just my aux buses. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be just the, yeah, you have to assign it to the bus. Mm-hmm. I've never done it the other way. There may be a way to do it, but I just haven't done it. Cool. Any other questions? Sweet. All right, y'all. So next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a submix of all my synths. So I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to locate my synths, right? Looks like we have about 7 of them. Again, I like to color code my items. For some reason, synths feel kind of purple to me, so I'm going to do purple. Cool. So little bit different than an aux-send configuration like we've been doing, right? Aux-send configurations, we actually put the send on the track, and that send is being accepted on a aux input feeding the signal. But here we're actually changing the output. So I have my selection made, right? I selected all my tracks. I'm gonna hold shift option because again, option affects all tracks, shift option affects only selected tracks. And I am going to come down here to new track. So I clicked on the output, and I'm just going to name this synth sub, right? Oh, forgot to uncheck that box again. Moving too quick. It's an aux track, so I am going to solo safe it. Command click on the S solo button here. Once it becomes grayed out, you can verify it has been solo saved. So again, this kind of skips steps, right? We have it labeled for us. It created the aux track for us, and it's already set the input with the labeling there. Again, since this has to do with the synths, I'm going to color code it with the same color as the synths. Now, if it asks for a particular bus, a couple extra steps, but just as easy, right? So I'm going to select my tracks again. I'm going to do shift option. I'm going to go bus, and let's say that they say using bus 9 and 10. I'll select bus 9 and 10, right? Once 9 and 10 have been selected, I'm going to create a new aux track. So I'll do shift command N for a new track, make it a stereo aux. Same idea. I'm going to name this synth sub, right? I'm going to command click on the solo button here. I want that color coded. Cool. And I'm going to set the input to bus 9 and 10. So, idea of a submix, right? Let's say we have a part where the majority of these synths are all playing at the like that part right there, right? So let's say you get your levels going, right? You get a good balance going on, you get your panning done, and you have these soloed because they're all playing at the same time. Right, so you get a little mix going to where they're blended nice, but then you unsolo them all, and you find that they're either too loud or too low in volume in the actual mix of the entire song. So instead of you trying to grab all these faders, right, you could group them and you could move them, but instead of you grabbing all these faders and trying to keep the relative resolution between each other and keep the spacing that you have, instead of moving all those, keep those the same. And now you just have basically a master fader for just your synths. So if it's too loud or if it's too quiet, I could just bring it up or down. Cool. Any questions about that?
I have a question. So, is the submix? So I'm just trying to make sure I understand the difference between the submix and making a comp track. So is the submix used to control the outputs of the tracks that you grouped, and a comp is to group those tracks and send it to add an effect on them? Am I understanding the difference?
So now submix is just changing the output, and they're all outputting to one channel. So let's say you're on the Neotech and you got channels 1 through 10, and it's all drums, and you want to make a drum submix. So let's say we bust them all out to 11 and 12 on the console, right? Then we go to track 11 and 12, and now we have fader control of all those drums with just one fader instead of trying to grab all of them. So same idea here. It's just kind of like we have a volume control for all our synths to move them up or down, so we don't have to mess up our mix here. There's other uses for submixes, but that's one that I commonly find myself using. As opposed to the parallel compression that we did earlier, we do not touch the outputs of these tracks. So these tracks are still outputting their normal mix. So we have our dynamic range that we create, right? So we're not compressing them. They're nice and dynamic. We get our mix going, but let's say we want to add some kick and punch. We want it to be more in your face. Then what we do is we create a sense. We're kind of like taking a split of that signal, sending it to this aux to be compressed. So that way we have our uncompressed drums and our compressed drums playing at the same time. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. For some reason when I'm learning the proficiencies, the comp and the submix, I don't know, they always seem one and the same to me, but I know there is a unique difference. So I just kind of wanted to figure that out. But yeah, that makes sense.
Cool, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I had a question. Do you commonly create submixes for most of your instruments?
For me, I always do a submix for my drums. If I have more than 2 guitars, I'll do a submix for my guitars. My vocals all the time, because I deal with a lot of hip hop artists, and they come in and they layer their tracks, right? Submixes for me is also a way to utilize even more plugins, because we're limited here, right? Looking at it, we have 2 slots of 5, so we have 10 slots for plugins here, and I get pretty hefty on my vocals. So, and which I need to conserve my processing power too, right? So what I do is I'll take my vocal track, I'll take all their dubs, their ad libs, and I'll take everything and I'll sum it to one vocal aux. Once I create that submix, what I do is I go in and do all my fine tweaking per vocal, because they're different performances and maybe different approaches, right? So I'll do my fine EQing here, a little bit of compression, but nothing that takes up a lot of processing power. And then on the actual aux track itself, for the submix on the vocal, things that I know that they're all going to be using and that are pretty heavy CPU, I put on here. So, I put an LA2A on every track. So, I'll come here and I'll go dynamics. I'll come all the way down and I'll use my LA2A. Now these are all DSP driven plugins, because the interface I do is DSP. So that's another thing I need to conserve. But, that's another idea, like in how you can utilize it. Because now instead of just having 10 slots, which I don't use all 10, for every vocal, I'll maybe have 3 or 4 on each one. And usually they're just small things like EQing, a small compressor that doesn't utilize too much CPU, a de-esser to clean up. And then over here, I have all my main processing going over. if that makes sense. But, you know, there's several different ways that you can use these submixes for, and it's just a matter of what works for you and what you want to experiment with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you're doing parallel compression and you also have a submix, then you would just output the submix to the parallel compression instead of doing like all your tracks in the drums to the parallel
It depends what you want to do. So you could create a submix. Like I can create a submix for my drums, right? Excuse me. And I can go new track, drum sub. And this would work fine. Right? I still have control here. So, I mean, we do have a couple different options now. So we can have all these drums being compressed for our parallel compression individually, or we can just come here and instead of having them all do it, we can just go bus 3/4. Right? And I can turn all these off and just have this one. Whatever works for you, you know. If you want to do the parallel compression on all tracks, because that way you have individual fader control on each one, right? Because like if we do it here and we just place it on the submix, we're kind of limited now, because let's say it sounds good on everything except the hi-hat. Let's say it's making the hi-hat too way too sharp, right? We can actually come in here if we have individual control and just bring that parallel compression down on just the hi-hat. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so just really depends what you're trying to do, and what works and sounds best for you, you know. There's a lot of different ways to route things and have things going. Cool. Any other questions? No problem. Sweet. All right. So we got the submix down. Let me check my outline real quick, make sure I'm not missing anything. All right, so for this next one, we're going to do some reverse reverb. So I'm going to hit Command S, right, because we should always be saving. And what I'm going to do my reverse reverb on is actually going to be the snare right here. So I'm going to solo this guy up. Now, this is a few steps to do. So I recommend that if you're taking notes, that you take good notes on this part. And I'll try to go a little bit slower because it is quite a few steps. Now, if you guys are on your personal laptop, or not personal, but your school laptop, and you go to Finder, you can type in reverse reverb, and in your quick tip docs, I don't think I have it on this computer, but in your quick tip docs, you have reverse reverb, and it tells you step by step on how to complete this manually. So aside from watching me, if you ever need a refresher, you know, you can look at that. And if you guys are practicing this at home and you get stuck, feel free to email me at any time. I'm pretty good at emailing back, usually within 5 to 10 minutes. So utilize me as much as you'd like. You can find my email on Crass Connect. It's just crass.arogers@gmail.com. But cool. So a couple different things I'm gonna do to do this. So first thing is I have my selected track, right? We're only gonna do this first, we're only gonna do this first part of the snare. We're not gonna do the entire clip. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate the track first, because anytime that I am audio suiting or making a change to an audio file, I always duplicate the track. So that way, if I do something and later down the line I don't like it, I can go back to the original and I didn't put myself against the wall, right? I can still go back and make changes. So a couple different ways to do a duplicate track. I can hit this drop down arrow, click duplicate, and that would do it. Or I can do Control Command \. Backslash is below the delete button, not the one next to shift. That's a /. And we could rename it, right? I could put snare reverse. Cool. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come up here to the audio suite. I'm gonna go to the other tab and I'm going to select reverse. And we are actually going to reverse these snares. So I'm gonna hit render, right? Make sure you have only the selection. I recommend using the grabber tool. Grabber tool is always gonna be accurate. If you do this, then you're affecting this part here. We don't want that, right? So using your grabber tool. I'm gonna hit render, and now let's listen to that. Cool. So clearly it is reverse now. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit Shift Command N to create a new track. I am going to create a stereo aux track. I'm gonna do Shift Command down, and I'm gonna create a stereo audio track. I'm going to name the aux track Reverse Reverb. Cool. And the stereo audio track, I'm going to name Reverse Print. Come on. I cannot spell today. Cool. Now I'm gonna go ahead and hit create. All right. So I'm gonna solo save this aux track, right? So now this is what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna come over here. We don't need this until a little bit later, but we will need to utilize the Reverse Audio Suite plugin a couple times. But for now, I'm just gonna put it off to the side because I don't need it. So I'm gonna come over to my aux track, right? I'm gonna do, is this the correct track? No, it is not. It is over here, excuse me. Cool, so I'm gonna come over to that aux track, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to insert some reverb. I'll just use the R verb since you guys all have that, or no, the D verb actually, let's do D verb. I'm gonna do D verb since you guys all have it. And you know, whatever it asks for, if it asks for a church, medium, whatever decay settings it asks for, you know, if it doesn't ask for anything, like I said, do not spend so much time doing this. Utilize your time appropriately. Cool. So now I got that set up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here and I'm actually going to send this bad boy. So a couple ways we could do this, right? If it asks us for a particular bus, we can set that bus input and then send that bus. If it doesn't ask, I can go down here to track. I can find my reverse reverb, and I can skip a couple steps. It'll route it for me and label it. And I love the labeling, keeps it nice and organized, right? So now all I gotta do is turn it up. Sounds like some reverb to me. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take that aux track and I'm actually going to output it to a bus. Any unused bus, you know, whatever it specifies. If it doesn't, use whatever works. I'm gonna use bus 5-6 in this case for this example. And now for my reverse print, the stereo audio track we created, I'm going to set that input to the same bus 5 and 6. So now what's going on is we have the aux send going, right? So we have reverb going, and instead of hearing the reverb, we're outputting it to a bus. We're accepting that input on the audio track. So now all we got to do is arm it. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to record this reverb. Now, there are some plugins out there that allow you to or automatically do this at the touch of a button. And I think even the Dverb allows you to do it as well. So if I go Dverb, right, there's reverse right here. The reason why we want you to do this manually is because, one, not every plugin offers this and not every hardware offers that. So if you're in a case scenario where you're working with something where you do not have the capability of just hitting a button, you don't want to turn the client down and tell them you can't do something just because you don't have a button to do it, right? So you always want to have a workaround. You never want to tell a client no, you always want to be able to perform. So same idea here. So I'm gonna hit Command Spacebar to start recording this. I'm gonna let it play out through the actual selection. So that way it has some tail, right? It has some tail to the reverb. Cool. So now what I'm gonna do is I can go ahead and hide and make inactive this aux track. I just needed it just for that sole purpose. I don't need it anymore, so I don't want it to get in the way. I'm gonna unarm my track here. I'm gonna solo this up just to make sure that we got some signal in. Yep. Sounds like we recorded that reverb. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit this drop down arrow and I'm gonna switch back to the original snare. Oh, it's this one. So that way I don't have to keep reversing back and forth. Now, now that's back, we recorded this in reverse. So we actually have to reverse this back as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this and with my reverse plugin, right? I'm gonna just hit render. Well, you know what? I'm gonna make a duplicate first because, like I said, I always like making duplicates when anytime I'm rendering an audio suite. So now I have a duplicate. So I'm gonna hit render. So now we have a reverse build up to that snare hit. A lot of people use this for vocals. If anyone listened to Tyga back in his mixtape days, anytime he was about to start his verse, you would hear the and then he'd start rapping almost in every single song. It was pretty popular back in the day. I mean, people still do it now, but you heard it more back then. But cool. Any questions about reverse reverb? Sweet. All right, if everyone is good there, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next step. Just checking my outline to make sure we're on track. Cool. So what I want to do next is we're actually going to create a headphone mix. Headphone mix is a pass-fail step in this proficiency, so it needs to be done correctly. So what we'll do is I want to make a headphone mix across all tracks. Now, attention to detail as well. If it specifies all tracks except, I don't know, violin, uncheck the violin. You know, you can command click to unselect something. And then just do all your sends on everything besides that violin. Not saying that's going to be the case scenario, but attention to detail because I have seen it happen before. And you can fail that step just because you did everything else right, but you put it on one of the tracks they asked you not to do. So attention to detail. Cool. So I have all my tracks selected. I'm going to do Shift Option, and I'm going to hit drop down. Dang. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm actually going to switch back to my interface. So that way I actually have outputs available for a headphone mix because right now I don't. It's still missing that file. That's why that popped up again. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is, again, make sure all my tracks are selected, which looks like they are. I'm going to hold, I guess I could just hold Option because it's all tracks. And pay attention to whichever send it asks for. Now, let's say it asks for send A. I have stuff on send A already, right? So if I were to just hit send A and drop it down, that's going to mess up all my progress I've made up to this point. So pay attention to that as well. If it asks for a send that you have sends on, you're going to have to go in and move them, right? Make sure that you don't overwrite your work because then you're missing points because it looks like you didn't complete other steps. Cool. I need to fix my playback engine real quick because since I switched, since I switched my playback engine, my inputs and outputs aren't all available. Quick way to default back to my original settings is just to hold Option, Default, right? Now, this isn't something you'd want to do if you're in a big studio or one of the studios at Crass. Normally, we would have a custom template set up because we may have multiple mediums or all kinds of different routing going on, and we have a custom template to ensure that the room runs smoothly. So in that case scenario, you know, you'd hold Option, click Import Settings, and you would select whichever studio you're in and import those settings. But if it's just your home setup and you got just your K6 or, you know, like just my interface I have, you can just Option Default, run a scan, and auto-populate the available inputs and outputs for that particular device or devices if you have multiple. Go ahead and hit OK. So now I'm going to come over here down, Option, and I'm going to use outputs 3 and 4. Cool. So we're not using a bus this time. There is a way that you could use a bus to do a headphone mix, but I'm just going to show you this way because I feel like this is the easiest way. So I'm going to now drop the send view. Anytime I create headphones, I like to see the send view just so I can distinguish them from the rest of my sends and work that I got going on. So you can hold Command and click this arrow right here, and it will drop the send view. Cool. So probably the most important thing, right? Headphones are always what? Does anyone remember?
Pre.
That is correct. Pre-fader, right? We don't want this fader to affect what our artists are hearing. So if I bring this down in the studio, I don't want to mess up their headphone mix for them. So we want it pre-fader. So I'm going to hold Option and click pre. one way to identify that it has become pre is now this button is lit up. And as you can see on each send, we have a little blue light on the arrow now. And even the P is also blue. You could also do follow main pan. That's an option, right? If you want the panning to be identical in their headphones. Cool. It's not necessary, but it's something you could do. The pre is necessary though. Cool. So now I got my headphone mix on everything. Now we'll come back. We'll do levels in a little bit, and you'll see why we're going to do them in a little bit opposed to right now. Cool. So now that we have the headphone mix going, what I want to do is I want to automate a fade out across all tracks without using a crossfade or the master fader. So we need to fade out across all tracks. So I'm gonna show you guys the most easiest and quickest, efficient way to do this. So what I wanna do is I wanna turn my all group on, right? So I'm gonna come over here and turn my all group on. If this isn't shown, you just gotta hit this arrow to populate it, right? Now, if I hold option and hit hyphen or dash, whatever you wanna call it, it'll pull up my volume view for all my tracks. I can also hold option, come here and click volume, and it will display them as well, right? So now we have volume view across all tracks. Now with my all group on, I can hold command, whether I'm in the smart tool or grabber tool, hold command and click. Now since I have the all group on, it's saying, hey, you're affecting multiple tracks. Are you sure you want to do this? Yeah, I do. And it drops a little anchor here across all tracks, right? So now I'm gonna come over here towards the obvious end and drop another anchor. We're gonna get the same message because we're affecting multiple tracks. Now I'm just going to grab that second anchor I created and drag it down. Again, affecting multiple tracks. Yes, I know. Thank you for watching my back. Cool. So now we have a fade out, an automated fade out. It does not have to be real time. You can accomplish this the way we just did. You could do it real time, but you know, this is quicker and more efficient, I feel. Sweet. We have an automated fade out across all tracks. So now the reason why I didn't want to do the headphones right away is because what I want to do is I actually want to copy the send levels or the track levels to ends, and I also want to have the automation copied as well. Because if I come here right now and I go line 3, 4, right, all of these are down. So we're looking at the level of our headphone sends right now. We have no volume on them. They're all turned down because we didn't do nothing with them. So I'm gonna go back to volume view. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna select all my tracks, right? I'm gonna do option command H, copy to send. I want the current value and the automation. Let me double check to see what send I had that on. I think if I just hover over it, it'll tell me. Send D. Cool, so I'm gonna do option command H. I want the current value, the automation, volume. We didn't do nothing for pan and mute, right? And I'm going to have it copy over to send D, and I'm gonna hit OK. So this is the volume view of all our tracks. If I go line, level, this is our headphone view. Notice it's exactly the same. That's what it should look like because we want the same automation and the same volume for our headphones as our tracks. Cool. Pretty easy, right? I'm gonna take my all group off so I don't accidentally affect all the tracks doing something. So if there's no questions for that, I think I only have one more thing for y'all. And that's gonna be to save an entire copy of the root media folder to make it compatible for an older version of Pro Tools. So I'm gonna go File, Save Copy In, not Save As, but Save Copy In. Yeah, no problem. What was your question?
Is your headphone mix, is that on a stereo aux or stereo track?
So you were cutting in and out, but you asked if my headphone mix is on a stereo aux. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So it's not, because we're not using a bus. We're using straight. So instead of doing a send with a bus, we're using an actual physical output. So on your K6, you know, You have main outputs 1 and 2, which you probably have your monitor set up for. And you also have outputs 3 and 4, which you can set up as second pair of monitors, or you can use for headphone mixes. Or, you could even use them as send and return, whatever you want to do. But for this case scenario, we're using it for headphones. We're using a straight output of our device and not a bus. You could do a bus. I just didn't show you the way to do that because this is quicker, I feel. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What if you need to like control the whole mix entirely? Can you just make an aux?
Yeah, so I could show you guys a second way. So what I could do is I could select all these tracks, right? I have all these tracks selected. So instead of using output 3 and 4, I can hold option. I can go bus, let's say bus 7, 8. I can send them all out to bus 7 and 8. So I got to make them pre-fader though, right? So I'm going to make them pre-fader, follow main pan. Let's go ahead and copy to send, get our levels up. Cool, we got our levels up. So now what I could do is, now that I have them all sending out to bus 7 and 8, I can do Shift Command N, create a stereo aux track. I can name this headphone mix or whatever, cans, whatever you want to name it. I could solo safe it. I can accept bus input 7 and 8. And where it says output, I'm going to change that to 3 and 4 instead of 1 and 2, because then it'll be outputting to my headphone output, right? So now I can get my whole mix going here, and I can just control the entire volume of that mix up or down. Make sense?
Would both of those methods pass the proficiency?
Yes, sir. Either one will give you a pass on that step, as long as everything in it is done correctly. Cool. Any other questions for that? Sweet. All right. So now we're going to make a copy of this entire root media folder, right, to be compatible with an older version of Pro Tools. Let's just say Pro Tools 9. I'm going to go File, Save Copy In for session format. So the most important thing to check here, it's going to be audio files, right? We do not want to send a blank session with no audio files, a blank session, right? We do not want to send that. So always make sure you check audio files. This other stuff, preference if you want to go through these settings, but the most important thing is going to be audio files. Now where it says format up top, I'm going to switch this to Pro Tools 7 through 9, because like I said, I want to make it compatible for an older version of Pro Tools. When it comes to conversion, I would only convert if absolutely necessary. If they're working with an interface that only supports 44.1.16, which I doubt they even have those anymore. But every time you convert, you're degrading the quality by a little bit. So the least amount of conversion is going to be the best. So if you don't need to convert, do not convert. Just leave it how it is. So audio files checked. Switch it to whatever it asks for. If it doesn't ask for an older version, just leave it at session latest, because that's going to be the latest version. If you're just making a copy of your root media folder, that's perfect. If they're using the same Pro Tools version you have, you don't need to change this. This is only if you're trying to send to someone that has an older version. So I'm going to do Pro Tools 7 through 9. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And I'm going to save it to the desktop. And I'll just name this 4PT9. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Now we'll get this little box that pops up. This is indicating, since we are saving for an older version of Pro Tools, there's going to be some settings that we have available that will not be available to them because they're working off an older version. That's fine. We are aware of this. It's just prompting you. So I'm going to go ahead and hit yes. Cool. So now I can save this guy and close out of here. I can come to my top here, 4PT9. So here's my folder, right? If I open this guy up, I have my PT session, PTF, and I have my audio files. And that is all I need in order to pass. Cool. If I'm grading you and all these are out here, you did something wrong. Should not look like that. I don't know how it gets like that, but I've seen case scenarios where it does get like that. But cool. Any questions? Sweet, y'all. Well, that is all I have for y'all. Thank y'all for coming in. And if there's nothing else, then y'all have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
No
Remember to sign
problem.
out.
Out or no?
What was that?
You have to sign out, Adam.
Appreciate it.
If you guys could just, no, you don't have to sign out. As long as you just typed your name in, that's fine.
Well. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
You too.
Later, y'all.
Thanks, Adam.
Later, Scott.
Thanks, man.
Yes, sir. Y'all have a good one.